All right, now we're going to talk about triads. Triads are three-note chords. That's why they're called triads. When we play a major chord, for example, a full G major, there's three different notes in there. That's why it's called a G major triad. In the G chord, we have G, B, and D. To give you a little quick theory of it, it's the first note, the third note, and the fifth note from a G major scale. Here's a G major scale. I take the first note, the third note, which is the B, and the fifth note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is D. So if I play G, B, and D, I get a G major triad. There's many ways to play that on the guitar. Here's a few that I found to be useful. Not only can you play it as an open chord, we could also play those three notes, G, B, and D, on the D, G, and B string. Looks something like this. So in this chord, I have the root note G on the 5th fret of the D string, followed by B, 4th fret of the G string, and D on the 3rd fret of the B string. Using those same three strings, I can also play a G chord using those same three notes up here in 7th position. Okay, but now notice where the G note is. Now it's on top, on the 8th fret of the B string. And I have the note B on the 9th fret of the D string, and the note G, 7th fret of the G string. Now this is known as an inversion. We have G chord here. This is a root position because the G note is on the bottom. When I play this G chord we just learned here, I have the note B on the bottom. So that's known as a first inversion G major chord because you have the third of the chord in the bass. What's important, though, is that you can play this chord and that you see where the G note is. So when you're playing other major triads, you know where the root note is. So in this case, it's on the B string. Okay, I can continue up the fretboard on these same three strings and play a G chord here by simply barring on the 12th fret. So now I have the G in the middle here on the 12th fret of the G string. So I have D on the bottom, G in the middle, B on the B string 12th fret. This would be known as a second inversion G major chord because I have the 5th, in this case D, on the bottom. So here's three G major triads. Okay, so like I was saying, we can move this now to other chords because you know where the root note is. In this next example, we're going to use G, D, and A. I'm going to start off with a G chord here in the first inversion. This is where we have B on the bottom, and the G is on top, on the B string there. Then I'm going to play a D chord, where the D note is in the middle there on the G string on the 7th fret. And then I'm going to go to an A chord, where the A, the root note, is on the bottom on the 7th fret of the D string. So those are my three chords. G, D, and A. All right, so let's check that example out with the band, and then we'll come back and talk about it a little more. All right, let's expand that idea a little further. Now we're going to start off on A, all the way up here in 9th position. The root note is going to be on the 10th fret of the B string. That's the note A. So I'm going to play A to G. You just move down 2 frets. A is here, move down 2 frets, we get G. And then I'm going to play D, where the D note, the root note, is in the middle on the G string. And then I'm going to follow that up with an A. Now the root note is on the 7th fret of the D string. I'm going to continue down G, just a whole step below where I played that A. And then I'm going to play a D chord, where the D is going to be the root note on the 3rd fret of the B string. and then I'm going to land on an open A chord. So it's only 3 chords, G, D, and A. But instead of just playing down in one position, I'm going to move all the way down the fretboard using those 3 chords. So once again, A, G, D, A, G, D, A. All right, let's check that out with the band. All right, so far so good. So now let's do an example where we're going to switch chords a little quicker. Same idea though. In this example, I'm going to switch from A to a C chord. So the A has the root note on the B string, C with the root on the D string, to a G chord, root on the B string. It's good practice for those of you who are not quite so sure about where the notes are on the neck. You got to think. It's a big help, especially when you're trying to play chords in other positions. You really need to know the names of the notes on the fretboard. So hopefully this is helping a little bit. Here's the A chord. A, 10th fret B string. C, root note is on the 10th fret of the D string. Going to G now, root note is on the 8th fret of the B string. D, root note is on the 7th fret of the G string. To F, root note is on the 6th fret of the B string. Now to C, root note is on the 5th fret of the G string. To a G chord, root note is on the 5th fret of the D string. And then I'm going to play D, root note is on the 3rd fret of the B string, finally landing on A. Let's check that out with the band. All right, that's a lot of triads, but we got one more to go because I want to show you my favorite triad chord, and this is in every AC/DC song, and it's simply this. If we take a D chord and put the 3rd of the chord, which is F sharp, usually if we play an open D chord, the F sharp is here on the 2nd fret of the E string. But what AC/DC does, and many other bands, but I learned this from learning AC/DC songs, you simply put the F sharp on the bottom. So you can do that with your thumb, and I'm muting the A string now. So I have F sharp, D, open D string, A on the 2nd fret of the G string, and then the note D on the 3rd fret of the B string. You could also play with your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th finger. That's another way that feels comfortable for me. 2nd fret on the F sharp, open D, 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of the G string, 4th finger on the 3rd fret of the B string. So here's a little jam using that chord. Let's check that out. A lot of songs in there. So, in this example, I was playing from A to G, power chord. Then I went to the D with the F sharp in the bass. I watch how easy it is to get back to the G chord now. Third finger doesn't have to move. That's a great little riff, just going back and forth between the D with the F sharp in the bass and the G chord. So in this little example, one more time, I played A, G, the power chord G, D with the F sharp, and back and forth, back to A, finally landing on D. All right, so that's a lot of work with some triads. The most important thing to know is where the root note is all the time, so that way you can apply these triads to whatever chord you may need to play. So we talked about having the root notes on the D string, on the G string, and on the B string. And we also learned this extra little D over F sharp chord, which I just love. So have fun with all of those triads.